All right, let's dive into something pretty wild today. We're exploring a philosophy where the goal isn't to win the race, but to finally realize it's already over. We're talking about finding peace, not in striving for more, but in the simple act of stopping. So, let's set the scene. Our journey begins here, in a world that feels like it's after the end of everything. The source material paints this incredible picture of a universe just tired, suffering from a kind of cosmic fatigue. And this isn't just a cool backdrop. It's the very foundation for a really different and, yeah, a really dark kind of wisdom. And this really gets to the heart of it, right? If the universe has already gone quiet, if the big show is over and the stars have gone out, then what's the point of all our striving? Why keep trying to climb higher in a world that's already reached its final quiet dusk? Okay, first up, let's really get a feel for the landscape of this philosophy. We're talking about a world where the very idea of motivation, the why that gets us out of bed in the morning, has just completely died out. So the whole idea is that the universe's engine has just stopped. You know? All those big cycles of creation and destruction, ambition and achievement, they've all just ground to a halt. There's no more forward momentum. There's just this deep, lasting silence. This quote from Lucifer Morningstar, it sets up the two main players in this whole drama. You have the architects, this group called the Infernal Council, who are actively preaching this philosophy of just stopping. And then you have the monuments, these figures called the Watchers, who just passively embody it, like silent statues of ash standing on the hills. Now you'd think, in a world like that, everyone would just stop. But no. Against this backdrop of total stillness, some people are still struggling. The Soothsayer calls it the fever of the climb, this last desperate and ultimately pretty pointless burst of human ambition. So the source gives us these characters, like a frantic climber and the classic figure of Faust. But here, they're not presented as heroes. Not at all. They're more like relics. They're symbols of this old, outdated ambition, this need to overcome and become something more. A goal that this philosophy just dismisses as a beautiful but totally empty lie. Okay, so on one side of the coin, you've got this idea of self-overcoming. And we all know this one. It's that drive for constant self-improvement, that relentless climb up the ladder, always searching for that holy yes, that feeling that we can be better, stronger, more. But as we're about to see, there's a radical alternative. So who's pushing back against that climb? Well, that would be the Infernal Council. They are the architects of this final dusk, the ones who champion the exact opposite of striving, all from their rotunda of frozen smoke. And each member of this council has their own special job, let's say. You've got Satan, the unmoving center, who insists the beginning and the end are the same thing. Lucifer, who shows everyone that moving forward is pointless. Beelzebub, who just lets everything decay into stagnation. And then there's Mephistopheles, who makes giving up feel like the most comfortable thing in the world. And I gotta say, I love this term, the will to nap. It's just so brilliant, right? It's darkly funny, but it perfectly captures the council's entire project. They want to take that burning fire of human ambition, that famous will to power, and just gently, patiently smother it until all that's left is this warm, comfortable desire to simply stop. This line from Lucifer, man, it's a gut punch. See, his whole deal isn't to lie to you or hide the truth. It's to show you a really terrible truth, that the peak you're striving for and the means of your own end, they're one and the same. The struggle itself is what dooms you. Okay, but the one who really ties all this together, who gives it its deepest voice, that's the Soothsayer. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's this clockwork obsidian owl, but it's always the voice of this final, difficult wisdom. And boom, right there, the Soothsayer just flips everything we think about heroism on its head. We're always taught to admire the person who struggles against all odds, who never gives up. But in this world, the greatest act of courage isn't the struggle, it's the surrender. It's finally, truly letting go. So what is this self-undergoing? Well, imagine that climber again. It's the moment he stops desperately scrambling for the next handhold, and instead, he finds this incredible relief in just letting go. It's about accepting the pull of the void not as an enemy, but as a kind of final, quiet homecoming.
And here it is, laid out side by side, the whole conflict in a nutshell. On one side, you have the fever of the climb, that endless search for the holy yes of more, better, higher. And on the other, you have the calm, final peace of the holy no, a complete rejection of the struggle itself.
And this is the end goal. This is the prize. The happiness of the grave. It's not about being miserable. It's about reaching a state of peace so absolute that even desire, even memory, just feel like burdens you don't need anymore. It is, as the text says, the bliss of a desert that has forgotten it ever needed rain. So, how do the Infernal Council and those watchers on the hills really connect? The source material gives us this final, really powerful analogy that just ties it all together perfectly. See, the council and the watchers, they're two sides of the same coin. The council is active. They're out there preaching this gray truth of futility, turning ambition into apathy. The watchers, those statues of ash, they just embody it. They've already given up their wings for what's called the leaden weight of the long tiredness. And this is the key image. The council and the watchers are like these two mirrors. They don't create any light, any meaning, any purpose. They just reflect the emptiness between them, back and forth, over and over, until that emptiness becomes its own comfortable, all-encompassing reality. And that brings us to the final verdict from the Soothsayer, and it is bleak. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're sitting on a throne of cold ash like Satan or standing as a statue of dust on a hill like one of the watchers. You're both just observing the same fundamental emptiness. The only real difference is the view. So that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. After exploring this whole philosophy of not trying, of embracing the fall, what do you make of it? Is this void a terrifying nihilism that we should fight against with every fiber of our being? Or does it offer a strange, profound, maybe even desirable form of peace?